Welcome back to Grim Advice with Gretta Myers. You've entered the Grimoire with 2 M's. Let's turn the page together. Alright, my little gremlins, it's late. I know. Don't. Shh, it's fine. We've got for you today, without further ado, the 3 feathers. There was once upon a time a king who had 3 sons, of whom 2 were clever and wise, but the third did not speak much and was simple and was called the simpleton. When the king had become old and weak and was thinking of his end, he did not know which of his sons should inherit the kingdom after him. Then he said unto them, Go forth, and he who brings me the most beautiful carpet shall be king after my death. And that there should be no dispute among them, he took them outside his castle, blew 3 feathers in the air, and said, You shall go as they fly. 1 feather flew to the east, the other to the west, and the third flew straight up, and did not fly far, but soon fell to the ground. Now 1 brother went to the right, and the other to the left, and they mocked Simpleton, who was forced to stay where the 3rd feather had fallen. He sat down and was sad, and then all at once he saw that there was a trapdoor close by the feather. He raised it up, found some steps, went down them, and then he came to another door, knocked at it, and heard somebody inside calling, Little green maiden small, hopping here and there. Hop to the door and quickly see who is there. The door opened, and he saw a great fat toad sitting, and round about her a crowd of little toads. The fat toad asked what he wanted. He answered, I should like to have the prettiest and finest carpet in the world. Then she called the young one and said, Little green maiden small, hop in here and there. Hop quickly and bring me the great box here. The young toad brought the box, and the fat toad opened it and gave Simpleton a carpet out of it, so beautiful and so fine that on the earth above none could have been woven like it. Then he thanked her and ascended again. The 2 others had, however, looked on their youngest brother as so stupid that they believed he would find and bring nothing at all. Why should we give ourselves a great deal of trouble to search, said they, and got some coarse handkerchiefs from the first shepherd's wives whom they met, and carried them home to the king. At the same time, Simpleton also came back and brought his beautiful carpet, and when the king saw it, he was astonished and said, If justice be done, the kingdom belongs to the youngest. But the 2 others let their father have no peace, and said that it was impossible that Simpleton, who lacked understanding in everything, should be king, and entreated him to make a new agreement with them. Then the father said, He who brings me the most beautiful ring shall inherit the kingdom, and led the brothers out, and blew into the air 3 feathers, which they were to follow. Those of the 2 eldest again went east and west, and Simpleton's feather flew straight up, and fell down near to the door into the earth. Then he went down again to the fat toad, and told her that he wanted the most beautiful ring. So she at once ordered her great box to be brought, and gave him a ring out of it, which sparkled with jewels and was so beautiful that no goldsmith on earth could have been able to make it. The 2 eldest laughed at Simpleton, foregoing to seek a golden ring. They gave themselves no trouble, but knocked the nails out of an old ring from the harness of the carriage horse, and took it to the king. And when Simpleton produced his golden ring, his father again said, The kingdom belongs to him. The 2 eldest did not cease from tormenting the king until he gave a 3rd condition, and declared that the one who brought the most beautiful woman home should have the kingdom. He again blew the 3 feathers into the air, and they flew as before. Then Simpleton, without more ado, went down to the fat toad and said, I am to take home the most beautiful woman. Oh, answered the toad, the most beautiful woman. She is not at hand at the moment, but you shall have her. She gave him a yellow turnip which had been hollowed out, to which 6 mice were harnessed. Then Simpleton said quite mournfully, What am I to do with that? The toad answered, Just put one of my little toads into it. Then he seized one at random out of the circle and put her into the yellow coach, but hardly was she seated inside it. Then she turned into a wonderfully beautiful maiden, and the turnip into a coach, and the 6 mice into horses. So he kissed her and drove off quickly with the horses and took her to the king. His brothers came afterwards. They had given themselves no trouble at all to seek beautiful girls, but had brought with them the first peasant woman they chanced to meet. When the king saw them, he said, After my death, the kingdom belongs to my youngest son. But the 2 eldest deafened the king's ears with their clamor. We cannot consent to Simpleton's being king. It demanded that the one whose wife could leap through a ring, which hung in the center of the hall, should have the kingdom. They thought, The peasant woman can do that easily. They are strong enough, but the delicate maiden will jump herself to death. The aged king agreed to do this. And then the two peasant women jumped and jumped through the ring, but were so stout that they fell, and their coarse arms and legs broke in two. And then the pretty maiden whom Simpleton had brought with him sprang and sprang through as lightly as a deer, and all opposition had to cease. So he received the crown and was ruled, and has ruled wisely for a length of time. Sorry, like I totally at the beginning was like, where did it? Forced to say the third feather had fallen. I was like, yes, say it as a tongue twister, and then remembered I was reading. No, couldn't do that. Okay, I got a couple points. First off, shout out again to youngest children. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, Simpleton. Again, what is with calling the youngest Simpleton? I don't understand. Okay. What was I saying? Oh, I was saying... Oh, right. So, everyone's like, oh, Simpleton. There's no way there's going to be anything on the ground right there. And then they go off and they're like, yeah, whatever. I can do whatever now because there's no way Simpleton's going to get it. Ha 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 ha. But then Simpleton's like, chill. There's a trapdoor. gonna stay here. So my point, that makes sense to you, is that sometimes the obvious answer is the right one. Like, where you're at is correct. Like, because the brothers are like, oh, we gotta follow the ones that are, like, taking on us on this journey. Trademarked. But, you know? But then, like, he didn't have to look hard or far to get the better answer, but they were like, because the world says to, we gotta take this journey. Trademarked. And follow one of the farther feathers, because if you stay, obviously you're an idiot. So on the one hand, definitely, like, sometimes the answer is right there in front of you, or it's like the obvious thing, and you're like, is this the right thing? It seems too obvious, but then it is. On the other hand, there are some situations where it's like, the obvious thing is not, like, you gotta, like, look harder than that. You gotta look better. So, be like Simpleton, because he didn't immediately just be like, well, because, okay, honestly, as I was reading it, I'm like, oh, is it gonna be, like, grass or flowers for the carpet thing? But no. So, if I'd been Simpleton in that situation, I might have been like, oh, it's grass, and taken the grass with me. Don't know how I would have done it, but he looked. He still looked, even though the feather said, do the thing. And he's like, okay, feather, I believe you, but where? And then he found it. Ta-da. Ta-da. Okay. Secondly, alright, back to youngest children, and they're now a metaphor for life. Sometimes, like, youngest children, like, if you have siblings, you, like, look at the youngest kid and you're like, I saw you grow up, so you can't change. Trademark. Like, it's a whole thing that, like, it's really hard to watch your younger siblings try and change as they get older, because you're like, no, that's not what you're like. Because, like, you grew up with them. You have this kind of fixed thing in your mind, which is normal. However, people really should change their opinion when they've got new information, but, you know, it can also be from the perspective of a parent, or like a really old friend, you know? Picking up what I'm throwing down. Because sometimes it can be really hard to watch people change, and sometimes hard to let them change. Especially if you're scared of losing them or losing a relationship or whatever. Or you're just like flabbergasted and you're like, no, this is a bad thing, you shouldn't be doing this. And yeah, and it can be really hard to communicate. It can be hard to communicate. However, in those situations, it's normal to struggle with someone, especially if they have a big change that's happening, like they're moving or they're, I don't know, other things, their personality drastically changes, or they start looking different, or, you know, thinking different. That's one's especially hard. And it's natural to be concerned or confused. That's valid. You're valid. You're still valid. You're valid. Still, yeah. It's valid to be concerned or confused or to have a hard time with that, because we're people. People have a problem with change. We like our rut. We like where we're, we don't like change. That's what I'm trying to get to, point across. However, in those situations, it's always important to communicate love first. Be like, I love you, you're great, and I have more questions, instead of being like, you can't do this. Communicating love first is really, really important. Because if that's the reason why you're worried about their changes because you love them, that's totally normal and natural. And if you put it across like that, it comes off as sweet and they get it and they understand. However, we're all human. We've all done this where we don't know how to communicate the I love you. And so we freak out instead and go from, it's honestly, because if love is here, it's like this little wall of these are secondary problems and or a shield because I'm afraid. Communicate the love first, because the secondary concerns and issues will A, be taken better, and B, will come naturally after love. It's like, I love you, so what's going on? I love you, so what's happening? I love you, so can you do this thing for me? And if you take out the love, it's like, what's going on? Why are you doing this? Etc. You know, with love, it's softer and nicer and much more appealing. So yeah, especially if you're an oldest kid and you're struggling with letting your siblings change and grow up and be different and all that. It's a hard process, but you're valid, and you're valid. Okay, alright my gremlins. Thank you for joining us for another Happily Ever After, or not so Happily Ever After. That's up for you to decide. What you decide is valid, because you're valid. You are. Either way, this is the end for today's episode, so tune in later, and we can learn more and turn a new page together. And tomorrow I will be finishing up the slate for this week, because we had to do a continuation, because it was just a long story. And it's gonna be, to remind you, the Golden Goose. It's gonna be fun. Okay, I'm excited. So, yeah.